Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. The markets got hammered today. Let's find out why. Yes, as you can see here, we've seen some activity in the precious metal markets. Pretty big dips across the board, with platinum being the biggest loser today in terms of a percentage drop. And silver is right behind it. Let's take a look here and see what's going on here. We've got a lot of it is due to the dollar strength. Platinum plunged more than 5% and gold shed about 2% on Monday, leading a sharp decline across precious metals driven by a soaring dollar. With deficit hit palladium, too, giving up some gains from a record rally that saw it breach $1,700. Silver slid more than 3% to its lowest in more than a month. Spot palladium eased 0.8% to $1668.33 an ounce, having earlier touched a record high of $1,700.71. I must have missed that. The metal has risen more than 9% this month. There is a strong fabrication demand, but a good part of this is speculative demand from investors who expect prices to rise, and also people who are getting out of gold, silver, and platinum because those prices are falling. Some of them are shifting into palladium. Well, that's the thing that makes not much sense, but they're seeing that excitement there, and that's typically seems to be the case. People tend to buy high and sell low. That's kind of what we're seeing here today. It's interesting how the psychology of the markets play such a big deal. And that, my friends, is why we can't blame it all on manipulation. For sure. I think that's a perfect example of that right there. There's a lot of concern that there isn't a lot of palladium around. A big part of that is people who own the metal don't want to sell at current prices. That's for sure. And they're right. It is a much rarer metal than gold, and even rarer than platinum. It is. The price of palladium, used mainly in emissions-reducing catalysts for vehicles, has risen about 33% this year and nearly 9% this quarter, despite a weakening auto sector due to tight supply. Meanwhile, gold shed about 1.8% to $1,469.61 after the dollar hit multi-year highs, making the dollar-denominated metal more expensive for holders of other currencies. Earlier, prices fell about 2%, the lowest since August 6th at $1,465.90, with bullion also marking its first monthly decline of 5%. So really, precious metal prices are only dropping based off the dollar because the dollar is showing some strength. For the quarter, however, bullion has risen more than 4% so far. So there's some good news there for those who are bullish on the metals. Gold and silver continued to decline on a slightly firmer dollar in a relatively uneventful geopolitical landscape. That's relatively uneventful for today and over the weekend. NTL FC Stone analyst Edward Meir said in a note. Also weighing on gold, stocks firmed after Washington's dismissal of a report from Friday, which had said the U.S. administration was considering delisting Chinese companies from U.S. stock exchanges. Investors also kept a close eye on the U.S. Federal Reserve's monetary policy. The central bank cut interest rates earlier in September for the second time this year. The Fed said they are going to be very cautious about lowering rates, since it's not clear what we really need that we really need to, which was taken as a confirmation that there's a fair bit of potential growth before getting concerned about recession. So people backed away from some of the fears that drove them into gold on a short-term basis, CPM Group's Christian said. I think they should just leave them alone. I don't think we should have lowered them last time, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, there's some fear, there's going to be speculation, but they lower the rate, and it has an effect for a very short amount of time, and then you get fear talk about the trade and the like, and these other things that basically ignore what the Fed is doing. The markets react based off of that news. Elsewhere, platinum dropped 4.4% at $889.29, having earlier slid about 5% to touch to its lowest since August 28th at $876. Silver shed about 3%. Both metals are up about 6% and 11.5% for the quarter, respectively. So again, looking back here, we see, platinum really took a pretty big hit today. 5% drop. That's pretty big. That's $48 shed away from the gains it had been seeing. And it kind of makes sense. These are fringe precious metals. Platinum, palladium, and rhodium are the PGMs, platinum group metals. And this is something that I think, as we see these hits, we're going to see that kind of volatility. Although palladium not nearly as much, I think, because of what the article I mentioned there before about people making that move in. But the metals we're really the most concerned about is the monetary metals, the more monetary metals, gold and silver. And we see here that silver took a bigger hit than gold as a percentage basis. And I think we're going to see that. We typically do see that anyway. Silver is a bit more volatile of a metal. But I think this bolsters the case that silver is one of those metals that people aren't quite ready to see it back as a monetary metal, as a hedge against economic instability. They're more into speculative plays in terms of silver, and that speculation is taking place in the paper markets, in the electronic markets. I think until we see numbers come from the Silver Institute with increased demand in coins, bars, and rounds, and silver bullion in the physical form, I believe we're going to still continue to see these wild swings where silver is going to either perform way better than gold or take a bigger hit than gold, more so than even usual. And what I mean by that is how it's reflected in the gold to silver ratio. So we can see that this gold to silver ratio, I believe, will remain high until we see more evidence that the precious metal silver is seeing much more again as a monetary metal, a hedge, than an industrial commodity. And that commodity aspect of silver, I think, is what is ruling the day in both its upswings and downswings. However, I think that in the upswings, you have the more likely to see it as a speculative play that perhaps that ratio will tighten up, and this is the beginning of it. As we can see now, the ratio is increasing now. That is widening between gold and silver. That width is now at 86.51, 86 ounces and a half of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. And I think that also bolsters the case as to why gold, which didn't take quite as big a hit, it's still at 1473.10 between the metals, is why this metal is seen as the ultimate safe haven. Silver is still a safe haven. I don't think we're going to see a ratio widen than it's bigger than its record back in 1991, as around 100 to 1. I don't think we'll see it get there again. There's a chance it's more realistic nowadays than ever before. However, I do believe that we will see that ratio potentially tighten up. It's just going to take longer than we thought. And so at times like this, it's gonna widen, and when the prices surge, it's going to tighten up a bit. But the tightening, in order for it to get below 70, I think we're going to have to be more patient before that happens. So there you have it. There's the precious metals, and that's kind of where things stand now. Now, as these prices have dropped, for one reason, the dollar strength, how are they doing in other currencies? Let's take a look, because I think this is something that is crucial to see and plays off the strength of the dollar. Now we can see they're still high, and that's a percentage drop there. Still falling in other currencies. There's the Australian dollar. You can see these percentages here, but not quite as much as the American dollar here. The Canadian dollar, see more drops there. And let's see what the Japanese yen is doing. Basically, we're looking at the percentages here. There's still how they are playing off the value. And really, when there's not much movement here, we can see here rhodium has actually went up. So the best way to test this is there's no movement in rhodium. So you can see the strength of the dollar compared to other currencies by looking at rhodium's price. So basically, the dollar is strengthened 0.24%. If we can take these numbers and match them up, if that really is a trace, it's probably not the most scientific way to check out the value of the currencies looking at precious metal charts, but you can see that gives some indication there. Australian, Canadian, so maybe the Canadian dollar strengthened even more. But nonetheless, there you have it. Very interesting indeed. Back to US dollars, we can see the movements here, and we'll play this out. Post your thoughts below. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for watching, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.